Do you want to start off just telling us a little bit about yourself, where you are right now?
Well, hi, I'm David Herring. I'm went to East Carolina University. I trained there as a journalist and a science communicator. And currently, right now, I'm sitting here in my office. I work within NOAA's Climate Program Office, which is based in Silver Spring, Maryland. And I run the website climate.gov and some associated websites, the U.S. Climate Resilience Toolkit. And overall, yeah, just trying to help people understand how climate is changing and what they can do to plan and prepare and build resilience.
That's really cool. What did your role as editor in chief look like when you were back in the newspaper? And what did like the environment look like at the time? Like, what were you doing as editor in chief there?
So when I was at the East Carolinian, this was right around in that span of time between 1989 or so and 1991. And I worked for a time on the journalism side in the news department. And then I jumped up and became actually the general manager. So I wasn't the editor in chief, I was general manager of the East Carolinian. So I not only ran the editorial department, but I also ran the business side of things as well. And one of the things that I did, this is way before your time, but desktop publishing was really coming into its own at that time. And
Mhm.
so we had a bunch of Macintosh computers, but they had the really small screens, and it was really challenging to do layout and design for a broadsheet newspaper.
Yeah.
And so I was instrumental in really pushing the journalism department to use desktop publishing software. There's a tool called PageMaker, Adobe
Mhm.
PageMaker, where we could do the layout and design for a full broadsheet size newspaper digitally and then spit it out in a way that really looked much more professional. In the time
Mhm.
before that, they were doing a lot of cut and paste with X-Acto knives and hot wax and manually laying it out. And it kind of,
Really? I can't
Mhm.
even imagine that stuff going on right now.
Yeah, it would take us almost all night to put the newspaper to bed, doing the old school layout and design
Yeah, I'm
over light
sure.
tables.
Oh my
And,
goodness.
there was a lot of tension at that time and resistance to change, as there
Mhm.
often is.
Yeah.
Yep.
But in the end, I feel like the East Carolinian had a more professional look and feel after we made it through that hard time. And so that was one of the changes I brought.
It's really cool.
Yeah. During your time as editor in chief, what do you think you learned most about yourself?
Uh, During my time there, I think I gained confidence in myself as a leader, and realizing that I didn't have to know all the answers to all the questions, that I could sort of manage and direct people in such a way as to get input from all the different aspects. We really ran that like a business.
Mhm.
And so we faced a lot of challenges in not only evolving into, say, the more modern computer layout and design and technologies, but we also had to report to the media board, which oversaw all the operations. And one of the things that I had to also do was come prepared with answers. I was accountable to a board, and there were a lot of challenges that we faced. And so I would work with managers in all the departments, advertising and distribution, and sort of collections and that type of thing. And so I had to gather input from the whole business operation side of the East
Mhm.
Carolinian as well as editorial. And then I had to be accountable to the media board in terms of coming prepared with their questions, how to address their concerns, how to negotiate and navigate some of the politics
Yeah.
of that situation, which could be challenging at that time.
Mhm.
We also had we also had some writers on the East Carolinian at that time who were really pushing the envelope in wanting to write satire, and it was very provocative and sometimes inflammatory to the media board. And so there was tension in terms of freedom of speech versus what is
Mhm.
appropriate. And
Yeah.
so I was having to navigate that space as well. So
Yeah.
being able to go into those types of meetings where there was a lot of pressure and I felt like a lot of people were looking at me to
Mhm.
help negotiate good outcomes, it really taught me a lot and helped me to become, I think, a better manager, a better leader and negotiator.
Yeah, for sure. Other than the computers, would you say you initiated any other changes while working as editor in chief?
I did. I We used to have as I mentioned, just picking up on that last thread, we had some really humorous and talented writers who wanted to write satire. Um, but one of the issues at that time was we even had the chair of the department in the School of Journalism who was actually discouraging students from working there because she felt like that some of the quality and some of the editorial standards of the East Carolinian were lacking at that time. And I felt like that's wrong because students need experience to get work. They need work to get experience.
Yep.
And so what I was able to do is to negotiate a place in the newspaper that we called the satire page. We kind of flipped it around and treated it as an inset. So
Mm-hmm.
it had its own banner. So it was kind of like having your cake and eating it too, where they could still have a creative outlet. It was still funny. The students enjoyed it, but it was a little bit separate and distinct from the more journalistic side
Yeah.
of the newspaper. And then I was also able to broker relationships with the Department of Journalism there to with some of the professors to encourage them to encourage their students to contribute to and write for the East Carolinian so that we could get more content and so that they could get experience.
Sorry to interrupt. So you reached out to like the communications department and you got those students to write articles?
Exactly. So I actually went and visited their classes and made a pitch, and I had to reach out to the professors there and
Mm.
ask permission to go. But in short, just trying to generate extra students to come
Yeah,
in and help the paper.
that's a great idea. I might do that too. That's a good idea. Because we're trying to find some more writers because we're kind of declining in terms of involvement with the East Carolinian. So I've been trying to figure out ways to market it. But that's a great idea.
Yeah, looking back, is there anything you think you would have done differently?
Yeah, I mean, I think first of all, I'm really pleased with the progress that we made, and I think it was really important for me to have and maintain trusting relationships with all the different people that had a stake in the East Carolinian. I think its role on campus is very important. I think the relationships with the media board were very important. Um, I think there was a real push to bring in full time professional people
Mhm.
to kind of oversee some of the dimensions of the East Carolinian. And for me, that was kind of a point of pride and a sticking point that I liked the fact that the newspaper was entirely, including the business uh, dimensions of the operation, entirely run by students.
Yeah.
And so when at that time when the media board was pushing to bring in full-time personnel to take over some of those roles from the students, I was pushing back and I kind of drew a hard line in the sand at that time. And I think in hindsight, um, I probably could have been maybe less rigid, maybe less idealistic, and more willing to compromise and negotiate and just keep working for solutions that were acceptable to everyone. So I
Mhm.
think I was maybe more rigid and more idealistic in my mindset at that time. Um, I think I came in with a lot of confidence and maybe a little hard nosed about things. And it may have ruffled some feathers both at the media board and even with some of my student colleagues. I think they
Mhm.
began to see me as a little too heavy handed. And so if I could go back and change anything, maybe I'd be a little more conciliatory and a little more flexible.
Okay. And kind of going along with that, I'm the editor in chief currently. Would you have any advice for me?
I like to put ideas, in my walk. I like to put when there's a problem or a challenge or a key question, I like to get it out on the table to invite the people I trust and the people I rely upon on my team now, for example. I rely on their counsel. I pay them for their opinion. So I
Mhm.
like to try to make a practice of speaking last, listening first, listening carefully, asking lots of questions, and then reflecting back. Is this what I'm hearing from you? And that type of thing.
Okay.
So I think, really listen and gather inputs, especially if you're having a creative brainstorm or things of that nature before
Mhm.
you make decisions. How can you widen your options? And then I think, it's good sometimes to experiment and to try new things. So what is a safe space for innovation
Mhm.
and for experimentation, and especially, on a student campus, a university campus, that should ideally be a safe space for
Yeah.
trying out new ideas and that type of thing. So, I think just encouraging yourself and your colleagues there on the paper now to experiment, to gather new ideas, to try new things, and also uh, pulse the student body. I don't know if you guys have done surveys or queries,
Yep.
but
I'm actually running one right now.
okay. And so, again, you're sort of listening and understanding what's the feedback
Mhm.
that you're hearing from the students. What would they like more of? What do
Yeah.
they enjoy? What do they value? And
Yep.
that type of thing.
That's great advice. Yeah.
Gotcha. So, at that time, how'd y'all come up with ideas for the budget?
We, at the time, we were in a really good situation where the advertising manager and the advertising team had, over a span of consecutive years, had really driven up the revenue stream from what it was. So we were actually at an embarrassment of riches, I would say, at that point in time. But that created a couple of challenges. So I had to go before the media board and convince them to allow us to spend that money for upgrading the computer equipment. So I mentioned, you remember those old school Macs with these
Yeah.
tiny little screens on them. So I had to sell them on the idea of allowing us to buy these big screen monitors for doing layout and design. So it might seem like not very much nowadays, but we wanted to spend several $1,000s upgrading the system, which at the time we were bringing in a revenue of like $280,000 in advertising revenue. So I was just making the point. This is just a drop in the bucket, and it's going to allow us to be faster and more sophisticated, and to learn and to become more modern. So, just pushing for that. Another challenge was, in a college town, businesses could come and go in the span of a semester. A lot of these sort of corner t-shirt shops or sandwich shops would kind of come and go. So they'd rack up a huge bill in advertising on the East Carolinian, and then they'd go out of business and we could no longer collect. So over a span of years, there was a tremendous amount of debt that had accrued on the books that we were never going to be able to collect. And I was trying to persuade the media board to let us simply write that off.
Yeah.
But they were seeing that as a problem. And I was saying, well, it's kind of not, because at the end, we're still growing revenues at a way faster rate.
Mhm.
And but being able to negotiate that point, in terms of what would be acceptable accounting practices for writing off what we're just simply unable to collect, and just factor that into our budget. So I think some of those types of considerations: how to manage the budget, how to manage
Mhm.
distribution, how to manage the purchase of more modern equipment and software. Um, I think, of course, back at that time, the internet, as you know it today, did not exist. Social media did not exist.
Yeah.
So I think if I was you all today, I haven't looked online to see, but I don't know if you're branching out into incorporating more social media
We
and more of
are.
a
Yeah.
digital presence.
That's like my whole goal as editor in chief is to increase engagement with the Instagram account because I feel like that's what people are looking at these days.
I would say, innovating in that direction is a good idea.
Mhm.
And if there are avenues for making it a more participatory enterprise, if you know
Yes.
what I mean, not only with the School of Journalism getting more
Mhm.
participation from J School students, but also just more interaction with your student
Yeah.
body and making it a more engaging space.
Yes, we want to start doing interviews. So we want to interview students around campus every single week and post a video on that. We want to start interviewing athletes. We want to start making it exactly what you said.
I think also, Trisha, I there's a lot of interest. This is an interesting time in our nation's history and the world's history.
It is.
I think it's also a time where students begin to really take note of what's happening in the world, what's happening on
Yeah.
the national stage and on the world stage. For example, recently what just happened with Jimmy Kimmel,
Yeah.
and freedom of speech, and there's kind of two sides to that debate.
Yeah.
And in terms of one side saying, well, we're being canceled, and now another side saying, no, now you're trying to cancel
Yeah.
us. And so the question is, I think it would be really interesting to get students to share their views and
Yeah.
to spend time thinking about these considerations. I think freedom of speech is not something we should take for granted.
Yeah.
And that would be another way you could leverage your platform, in my
Yeah.
opinion.
We had a Charlie Kirk memorial going on at ECU. So, me and
Mm-hmm.
another member of the newspaper went and interviewed students there last night. We posted on the Instagram account and it went like crazy viral just because it's so
Nice.
up with the times right now.
By the way, this painting over my right shoulder, that's a Greenville, North Carolina original. My roommate and one of my good friends to this day, Roger Kemmerer,
Mm-hmm.
he's kind of a local celebrity to Greenville.
That's
And he had a lot of the paintings that were up and displayed in Cubbies.
Oh,
I was
really?
there
oh,
when Cubbies
Yeah.
first opened. I was one of the first employees,
really?
and I knew the two coaches. One of them was a running back coach for East Carolina, Robbie Barrow, and his brother Dean Barrow.
Wow.
And they commissioned my buddy Roger to do a lot of the paintings that were hanging up in there. And that's one of the Roger Camera originals right there.
That's very cool.
Yeah.
Get a shout out.
A little shout out to my friend. He was an art student at East Carolina, by the
Okay.
way. He went to
That's
school
very
there as
cool.
well. I'm just circling back briefly. Another way you can use your platform that it's a subject that's now very near to my heart, of course, climate change and climate
Mhm.
science. So I'm now communicating a lot about climate science and trying to engage people in thinking about that and what they can do and how it relates to them.
Mhm.
And I'm aware of the fact that a lot of people increasingly are feeling a sense of anxiety or even despair about
Yes.
the issue. They feel like, well, what can I do? I'm just one person. It's
Yeah.
such a big issue. It's a, what, they feel overwhelmed.
Mhm.
And I think just helping people understand that there are actions that can be taken at many different scales, they that they can become more conversant
Yeah.
in their spheres and that type of thing. And so I think that would be another type of issue that on your platform involving students would be a great way to give them an outlet, to give them a voice.
Yeah. You're very right. We'll definitely think about doing that. Last question for you. What is your favorite story that you ever ran for the East Carolinian?
My favorite story. Um, I don't know if I would call it my favorite story, but I'll tell on myself a little bit. When I first started there, um, Tim Hamilton was the news editor, and I was really just getting started. And he would give me assignments, but I really wanted to be a science communicator and a science writer, and there wasn't really a beat for that. And so I said, well, in addition to doing an assignment, can I pitch one? Would you be willing to let me write? So I wrote kind of an op-ed editorial
Mm.
about a new technology that no one had heard of yet. At that time, it was very, very niche, very fringe, still very futuristic nanotechnology. I was very interested in nanotechnology at the time. And I was trying to be very provocative and I was experimenting with my own writing style at that
Mhm.
time. And I opened with a sentence that I really got they really teased me a lot about it. I think I said something like, the human race is pregnant with the potential of this new emerging technology called nanotechnology. And they're like, pregnant with the potential? What is that? And so they really gave me a lot of grief. Rightly so. When I look back now, I'm even blushing a little bit, even remembering it. I was thinking, yeah, that was probably a little too dramatic. But I was trying to impress upon people that this is going to be big and you
Yeah.
haven't heard of it yet. And of course, fast forward to today, nanotechnology touches many different aspects of our lives. And so it definitely has arrived. Um,
Predicted the future with that one.
well, I didn't, but it was definitely others did. I will say one other thing that you might be amused about. I left the East Carolinian, and with some of my partners from the East Carolinian, we temporarily started a newspaper in competition with the East Carolinian. You may have not known that. It was
Really?
called the East Carolina Marauder, and
Okay.
we were active for one semester. And I became the editor in chief of the Marauder,
Mm-hmm.
and we published in alternating days with the East Carolinian. And some of my old colleagues at the East Carolinian, who ran the satire page,
Mm-hmm.
dedicated an entire issue of the satire page to making fun of me. And I considered it, I think they really wanted to jab me, and, and,
Yeah.
and, and sort of maybe deflate my confidence or whatever. But in a way, I took it as a compliment that they
Yeah.
dedicated the entire
Yeah.
issue
It's
to
that
coming at
important to
me. So
them.
there's like a whole, yeah, there's a whole issue of the satire page dedicated to bashing me and making fun of me. And I thought it was very funny and very well done. In fact, I just a couple of years back, I dug it up out of a box that I have
Mhm.
in a storage room in my house, and I was sharing it with my kids and saying, "Look what they wrote about me way back when." So that was kind of an amusing
That
story from back
is
in the
that is
day.
funny. That means you were worth talking about,
It's
though.
very true. Very true.
Went too.
But it was a lot of fun. A lot of really talented women and men on the paper back in that day.
Mm-hmm.
And overall, I just feel very grateful for the opportunity that I was given. I learned a lot. I gained a lot of confidence. Learned a lot of lessons that I've taken with me right on up until today.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing. That
Thank
was
you for the
actually very
opportunity.
insightful. Thank you so much. That was great. I enjoyed hearing everything.
Well, I appreciate you reaching out, and it's nice to meet you, Trisha. Nice to meet you,
Yeah, nice
Cannon.
to meet you.
You too.
And
Nice to meet you.
yeah, good luck in your podcast.